The scream tore through the house like a siren, sharp and raw, slicing through the lazy hum of Sunday afternoon. I was halfway through folding laundry, the scent of fresh detergent still clinging to my hands, when my daughter, Lily, burst into the Lee room, her face streaked with tears, her voice breaking as she choked out, "Dad, something's wrong with Scout. He's not moving." My heart lurched, the world tilting as her words hit me. Scout, our scrappy little terrier mix, the puppy who'd been tumbling through our lives for barely 2 months, was the heartbeat of our home. I dropped the towel I was holding and bolted for the back door, Lily's sobs trailing behind me like a shadow. Outside, the backyard was bathed in golden sunlight, the kind of perfect September day that promised picnics and laughter. But there, sprawled on the grass near the rose bushes, was Scout, his small body twitching violently, legs jerking in unnatural spasms, foam flecking his muzzle. The sight punched the air from my lungs. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I touched his fur, cold despite the warmth of the day. His eyes, usually bright with mischief, were glassy, half-lidded, staring at nothing. "Scout, buddy, hang on," I whispered, my voice cracking. Lily hovered nearby, clutching her arms around herself, her cries muffled as she repeated, "He was just playing, Dad. He was chasing a butterfly." I scooped Scout into my arms, his weight terrifyingly limp, and ran back inside, yelling for my wife, Emma, to grab the car keys. She appeared from the kitchen, her face paling as she saw Scout's condition. "What happened?" she gasped, but there was no time to answer. I was already moving, cradling Scout like he was made of glass, my mind racing with a single desperate thought: get to the vet. Now! Lily scrambled into the back seat, her hands hovering over Scout as if she could will him to be okay. Emma slid into the driver's seat, her knuckles white on the wheel as we peeled out of the driveway, the tires squealing against the asphalt. The ride to the clinic was a blur of red lights and honking horns, every second an eternity as Scout's seizures grew weaker, his breathing shallow. I pressed my hand to his chest, feeling the faint, erratic thump of his heart. "Stay with us, Scout," I murmured, glancing at Lily's tear-soaked face in the rear EW mirror. She was whispering to him, promises of treats and belly rubs, her voice a fragile thread holding us together. Emma gated the streets with fierce precision, but I could see the fear in her eyes, mirroring my own. When we burst through the vet's doors, the receptionist's eyes widened at the sight of Scout. "Emergency!" I shouted, and a tech rushed forward, whisking him into the back. We were left in the waiting room, the sterile smell of antiseptic choking the air. Lily curled into Emma's lap, her sobs quieter now, but no less heartbreaking. I paced, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, my mind a storm of questions. Scout had been fine that morning, tearing around the yard, barking at squirrels. How had it come to this? After what felt like hours, Dr. Larson, our vet, emerged, his face grim. "Scout's stable for now," he said, "but it's bad. We found traces of a potent rodenticide in his system, commercial grade, not something you'd find lying around accidentally." The words hit like a sledgehammer. Poison. Someone had poisoned our puppy. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, and Lily looked up, confused, her voice small as she asked, "Why would someone hurt Scout?" I had no answer, only a growing ember of rage in my chest. This wasn't random. Someone had done this deliberately. As Dr. Larson explained that Scout would need intensive care, IV fluids, anticonvulsants, maybe even blood transfusions, I felt the room spin. He couldn't guarantee Scout would pull through. It depended on how much poison he'd ingested and how his body fought it. Emma asked about filing a cruelty report, and the vet nodded, saying they'd notify the authorities if tests confirmed intentional poisoning. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed to know who could look at a puppy, a creature of pure joy, and decide to snuff out his life. Back home that evening, with Scout still at the clinic, our house felt hollow. Lily refused to eat, sitting cross-legged on the couch, clutching Scout's favorite squeaky toy. Emma tried to coax her into bed, reading her favorite book, but Lily's eyes stayed red-rimmed, her questions relentless. Will Scout be okay? Why did this happen? I wanted to shield her, to promise everything would be fine, but the truth gnawed at me. Someone in our quiet, tree-lined neighborhood had crossed a line into cruelty. My suspicion zeroed in on Margaret Hensley, the iron-fisted president of our homeowners association. We'd moved to Willow Creek 6 months ago, drawn by its tidy lawns and promises of community. But Margaret had made it clear from day one that she didn't approve of user Scout. She'd sent us letters about everything. Our mailbox wasn't regulation height. Our sprinklers ran too long. Scout's barking was a nuisance. I'd laughed it off at first, chalking it up to her need for control. But now, with Scout fighting for his life, those petty complaints took on a sinister edge. Margaret was a widow in her late 50s, her sharp eyes always scanning the neighborhood like a hawk. She carried a clipboard everywhere, jotting down infractions with a zeal that bordered on obsession. She cornered me once about Scout digging in our flower beds, her voice dripping with disdain as she said, "Pets like that don't belong in a place like Willow Creek." I'd brushed it off, but now her words echoed in my mind. Had she escalated from citations to something far worse? The next morning, I called the police, explaining Scout's poisoning and my suspicions about Margaret. The officer, a tired-sounding man named Jenkins, took my statement but warned that without evidence a witness, a video, something concretite was just speculation. Animal cruelty cases are tough, he said. People don't usually confess. I hung up, frustrated but undeterred. If the police wouldn't act yet, I'd find proof myself. I started by talking to neighbors, knocking on doors under the guise of checking on Scout's condition. Most offered sympathy, but a few shared stories about Margaret's reign of terror. Tom, a retiree across the street, admitted she'd threatened to report his cat for roaming. "She's got a vendetta against pets," he muttered, glancing nervously at her house. Another neighbor, Sarah, whispered that she'd seen Margaret near our fence the day before Scout got sick, carrying a small bag she quickly hid when Sarah waved. It wasn't much, but it was enough to fuel my resolve. Determined to protect Scout if he came home, I ordered a set of security cameras online, opting for ones with night VY sound and cloud storage. Emma helped me install them, her hands steady despite the strain in her eyes. "If she did this," Emma said, tightening a screw, "she's not getting away with it." Lily, meanwhile, drew pictures of Scout, taping them to the fridge as if her love could pull him through. Every night, we VY sighted the clinic, where Scout lay hooked to machines, his tail GIVYing a weak wag when he heard Lily's voice. 3 days later, Dr. Larson called with an update. Scout had Sir VY-ved the worst, but the poison had caused neurological damage. His back legs were partially paralyzed, and he'd need a custom wheelchair to move. The news hit Lily hard. She cried into Emma's shoulder, asking why Scout couldn't run anymore. I felt helpless, my anger at Margaret now a white-hot blaze. The vet's test confirmed the rodenticide was a restricted type, illegal for residential use, suggesting someone had gone out of their way to obtain it. That was no accident, it was a plan. I went back to the police, armed with the vet's report and Sarah's account of seeing Margaret near our fence. Officer Jenkins took notes, but repeated his earlier warning. Circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. "We can question her," he offered, "but don't expect a confession." I nodded, biting back my frustration. Confronting Margaret directly felt risky. She was cunning, likely to twist my words, but I couldn't sit idle. That afternoon, I saw her marching down the sidewalk, clipboard in hand, her lips pursed as she inspected a neighbor's shrubs. My pulse pounded as I approached. "Margaret," I said, keeping my voice even, "we need to talk about Scout." Her eyes flicked up, cold and unyielding. "I heard about your dog," she said, her tone flat. "Tragic." I pressed her, mentioning the poison, the illegal rodenticide, watching for any crack in her composure. She stiffened, her grip tightening on the clipboard. "I don't know what you're implying, but I'd be careful throwing accusations around." She turned on her heel and walked away, Leah VYing me fuming. That night, Emma and I sat up late, piecing together a timeline. Scout's symptoms had started shortly after Margaret's last inspection of our yard, when she claimed our hedges were too tall. Had she slipped something over the fence then? The cameras weren't up yet, so there was no footage, but the coincidence was too stark to ignore. Emma suggested checking with other neighbors who'd lost pets. Maybe there was a pattern. The idea sparked hope. If Margaret had done this before, we'd have a stronger case. The next day, IVY cited the Garcias, a family 2 streets over who'd lost their beagle, Milo, a month earlier. Elena Garcia's eyes welled up as she described Milo's sudden illness, seizures, paralysis, death within days. Their vet had found rodenticide too, the same kind as in Scout's system. We thought it was an accident, Elena said, but now. She trailed off, her husband, Javi, nodding grimly. They agreed to share Milo's vet records, and I felt a surge of momentum. This wasn't just about Scout Anna Maria, it was about stopping a predator hiding behind HOA bylaws. With the cameras now recording every inch of our property, I felt a sliver of control. Lily helped name the system Scout's Guardians, her small act of defiance against the unknown. But Margaret didn't stop her campaign. A new citation arrived, claiming our driveway had unauthorized oil stains. It was absurd, but the typed signature Margaret Hensley, HOA president, lacked the usual board approval. Was she acting alone, bypassing the HOA entirely? I filed the notice away, sensing it could be leverage. Then came a break. Javi Garcia called, his voice tense. He'd overheard Margaret at a coffee shop, ranting about irresponsible pet owners and how she'd handled problems before. She didn't name names, Javi said, but she sounded proud, like she'd gotten away with something. He was reluctant to go to the police, fearing Margaret's influence. Secht once reported his cousin's landscaping business for a minor permit issue, nearly costing him his license. I promised to keep his name out of it, but urged him to document what he'd heard. The police were still skeptical, but a new detective, Ramirez, took an interest. She suggested the rodenticide's source might be key. If it's a banned substance, she said, it could tie to bigger crimes, black market sales, even organized rings. The idea seemed far-fetched Margaret as part of a criminal network, but Ramirez encouraged me to dig deeper. I reached out to a college friend, Nate, who worked in environmental law. He agreed to look into restricted pesticides, promising to flag anything suspicious. Meanwhile, Scout came home. His wheelchair was clunky, but Lily decorated it with stickers, calling it his super speed racer. Watching him drag himself across the yard, yelping in frustration, broke my heart, but his spirit, his eager barks, his lopsided grin kept us going. Emma and I took turns with his therapy, massaging his legs, guiding him through exercises. Lily read to him every night, her voice steady even when her eyes glistened. The neighborhood grew tense, whispers of Scout's story spreading. Margaret's citations became more erratic. One neighbor got fined for a non-compliant bird feeder. I sensed she was unraveling, her control slipping as scrutiny mounted. Then, one evening, Sarah rushed over, breathless. She'd found an empty pesticide container in the woods behind Margaret's house, half buried under leaves. "It's not proof," she said, "but it's weird, right?" I photographed it before turning it over to Ramirez, who sent it for testing. Nate called a week later, his voice urgent. The rodenticide in Scout and Milo's systems matched a batch linked to an illegal supplier in the next state. "It's not just a local issue," he said. "The feds are sniffing around EPA, violations, maybe even FDA." My stomach flipped. Could Margaret's pettiness have tangled her in something this big? I forwarded Nate's info to Ramirez, who promised to loop in federal contacts. The turning point came when Ramirez called me to the station. The container Sarah found had traces of the same rodenticide, and Margaret's fingerprints were on it. Better yet, Javi had come forward, his coffee shop story corroborated by another customer. The police searched Margaret's garage, uncovering a stash of unlabeled chemicals, purchase records, and emails where she'd bragged about eliminating nuisances. It was enough for an arrest: felony animal cruelty, possession of banned substances, and possibly more if the feds got involved. Margaret's arrest hit Willow Creek like a thunderclap. Neighbors gathered in driveways, swapping stories of her intimidation. The HOA board issued a statement disavowing her, promising reform. Scout's recovery became a rallying point. Kids drew cards for him, and the Garcias hosted a pet safety fundraiser. Lily spoke at it, her voice clear as she described Scout's fight, urging everyone to watch out for each other's animals. In court, Margaret's defiance crumbled. Faced with texts, fingerprints, and chemical EVY denke, she pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence. The judge sentenced her to 3 years, plus restitution for Scout and Milo's vet bills. As she was led away, her eyes met mine not with remorse, but with a flicker of resentment. I didn't care. Justice wasn't just for Scout. It was for every pet she'd harmed, every family she'd bullied. Scout's wheelchair is a fixture now, his wheels Leah VYing tracks in our garden. He chases butterflies again, slower but no less determined. Lily's laughter rings out when he races her, and Emma's flower beds bloom brighter than ever. The neighborhood feels alive, neighbors greeting each other without fear. Margaret's house sits empty, her reign a fading memory. Sometimes I think about how close we came to losing Scout, how one person's cruelty nearly broke us. But then I see him nuzzle Lily, hear her giggle, and I know we won. Not just against Margaret, but against the kind of malice that hides behind rules and smiles. Scout's Story Hour story is proof that even in the darkest moments, resilience and truth can light the way home. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.